Good morning. They said the microphone was on the fritz during class, so we'll see how this goes. Sounds good so far. It's good to see you all this morning. Again, this is my first time doing this on a Sunday morning, so if it looks like I'm dancing, I'm just a little nervous. I want to thank the elders for this opportunity to come up here. Through all the years of my life, every man who's come up here has been someone who's been focused on challenging others and challenging us to focus on the things of God and the things from above and His truth. So that is my goal this morning, is to challenge us to how we are disciples of God. So this morning we're going to look at, continue our theme with discipleship. And the question I want to ask is, what do we treasure? I found a little piece of art there of some pirate treasure. We think of treasure, we often think of pirates or something, right? But what do we treasure? You think of the word treasure, it's something that we value. It's something that is important to us, right? Maybe some valuables, some keepsakes that somebody gave to us, our children, something that we find is valuable. So the question is, do we value the things of God or the things of the world? What do we value most? So the goal of this lesson is for each of us to evaluate our hearts in that question. What do we value most? The things of God or the things of the world? And only I know what the answer to that is. And this has often been a concern of mine, and something I'm always working on, always focusing on, is trying to manage the distractions that can come from all different directions, right? So my concern is that as Christians, we are often too distracted by the things of the world, and that our faith can be choked out by those distractions. When we're, even when we're here, but when we're outside in the world, when we're at work, when we're at the store, when we're at home, all these things are grabbing our attention constantly, right? The social media, we look at our calendar, it's full of things. And the question is, when we're balancing our lives, where does God fit into that? So that's going to be our focus this morning. So I want to look first at Matthew 6, verses 19 through 21. And again, as we're looking at being disciples, I want to look and see what Jesus has to say on the matter. Verse 19, he says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So Jesus is saying here, let us not focus on the things of the world, the physical, but the things that are eternal, the things of God. Lay up for treasure the things that are for God, and not where the moth and rust can destroy. Because our faith, our relationship with God, moths, rust, they can't destroy that. They can't take that away from us. But the point here that Jesus is making is temporary versus eternal. And when you look at Jesus' teachings throughout the Gospels, he's always pointing towards above. He's always pointing towards our relationship with God, the things that are important with our relationship with God and in His people, not wealth, not the things that this world provides. So, do we love the world? In 1 John chapter 2, it says, "Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away, along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever." So the things of the world, the things that we get distracted with, the things that we get busy with every day, those things are going away. And if we love those things more than God, I submit that that's idolatry. And that's where we have to be really careful as we manage the things that we deal with every day in our lives. In And it says, if anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. So if we love the world, we love the things of the world more than God, it says the love of the Father is not in us. And again, the point here is temporary versus eternal. Are we focused on the temporary, or are we focused on the things that are going to go on into eternity, the things of God? So I have a list here of just some things I came up with that can be distractions, things that we can just fill up our calendar with, right? Number one, I have cell phone. It's probably the first thing that came to my mind, so that's probably telling something about myself. I don't know if you guys there's this phenomenon that happens when you pull up your phone. It's just one of these, you just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And then I used to have a Facebook. Actually, I still have a Facebook account, but I don't use it anymore. I remember laying in bed one morning, and I pulled up my phone, and I was just scrolling mindlessly on Facebook, just seeing what somebody has to say. Because that's how we're designed, right? Things that just grab our attention constantly, these little short bits of things. And I'm just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And I'm like, what am I doing, right? So I was like, I got to get away from this. So our cell phones can be very useful, right? There are very, very many tools on there that can be useful, apps that we can use every day to manage our everyday lives. But they can be a great distraction, and we have to manage that. Social media, music, sometimes that can tie in through there as well. Sometimes I feel like we have to have noise going on constantly, right? We have to have something always grabbing our attention, or we're just not satisfied. But sometimes we need to go to a quiet place and seek God and talk to Him rather than just constantly busying ourselves with things. Movies, TV shows, there's endless amounts of movies, TV shows. I meant to talk about YouTube. If you look at YouTube, I think it says there's, on one day of our lives, there's enough content on YouTube for us to spend 84 years watching content. It would take you 84 years to watch the amount of content that's added to YouTube every single day. So something to be mindful of. It's an endless just rabbit hole of information, right? How much information do we actually need, So we have to be careful. Sports, hobbies, right in there. There's some people that maybe know more about the Chicago Cubs than they do about the Word of God. I was there once. So we have to be really careful. I love baseball, but I love God more. Books, video games. Spent way too much time in video games when I was younger. Probably just trying to numb the world, I don't know. So we have to be careful with those as well. Materialism stuff. If you pay attention to, I love history, so I'm always thinking about that. If you've noticed, there's this trend that's been going on since maybe the 40s, 50s, just from what I've observed. If you look at the houses that were built in the 40s, 50s, they didn't even have a garage, some of them, right? People just parked outside. And then you start to see houses with a one-car garage. Then you start to see houses with two-car garages. I think most of us have two-car. Then there's three, then there's four. As our country is getting more wealthy, we're becoming wealthier, and we're more susceptible to materialism. Most of you have probably seen the TV show Hoarders. Right? It's pretty gross sometimes, some of the things you see on that TV show. But our nation and sometimes our people, we're just fascinated with materialism and all these things, and we want to keep them and hoard them. So we have to be really careful with materialism as it can come in and choke us out. Family activities, it's pretty self-explanatory. Self-image, are we focused more on our appearance, our gym, going to the gym, our clothing, our self-importance? Those are things that we can potentially put above God. Our job, our career, we could potentially work ourselves to death, right? Trying to acquire wealth, trying to support our family. Obviously, we have to work a job, right, to support our families, but we have to be careful. If that job becomes more important than God, it's idolatry. School, same thing, the work, wealth, acquiring wealth. Home improvement. I heard it joked when I first bought a house that the honey-do list never ends, right? There's to-do list, and you get 2 or 3 things done, and then there's 2 or 3 more things added to it. My uncle said that it'll just be forever. So we have to manage those things. I remember this stuck out to me because I had a neighbor of mine. Every time I would drive by her house, because it was on the way to my house, I'd see her out there. She was an elderly woman. She'd be out there manicuring her grass, and just the little scissors, just every weed, everything in her grass, she would be out there manicuring it. And her yard looked very, very nice, right? And I'm not here to judge her salvation, but when she passed away, I drive by that house now, and I can see the weeds have just grown in and taken over, right? Those things that we focus on, they're going to be gone. Politics and world news. The news cycle, if you get on the news, it's constantly changing, right? The information that comes in from world events and just politics is mind-numbing. So the question is, as we fill ourselves, fill our lives, fill our calendars with all of these things, where does God slide into that? Where are we putting time for Him? Where are we treasuring Him over these things? So I'd like to look at the parable of the sower. And I'm just going to summarize the beginning of this because I don't have time to get into it. So the parable of the sower, we have a sower is broadcasting seed, right, into the ground. So when you look at the ground, there's different types of soil, right? So we have 4 soil types in the parable of sower. And so the first one is the path. And there's those who have heard, then the devil comes and takes away the word from their hearts so that they may not believe and be saved. And then there's those that fall upon the rock, those who receive the word with joy, but these have no root. They believe for a while, and in the time of testing, they fall away. So then the third and fourth, we have here, it says, and as for what fell among the thorns, they are those who hear, but as they go on their way, they are choked by the cares and riches and pleasures of life, and their fruit does not mature. And as for that in the good soil, there are those who hearing the word, hold it in fast, honest and good heart, and bear fruit with patience. So this is the risk, right? If we give ourselves over, not only is it potentially idolatry, if we give ourselves over to the things of the world, but they can choke out our growth. And it says here that their fruit does not mature when they're choked out by the cares, the riches, the pleasures of life. So the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control, those things are choked out, and we do not grow in those things if we are given over to the cares, the riches, the pleasures of life. And we're not going to be that good soil that bears fruit for God. I have here a picture I took in my backyard. I have a raised bed garden. So you're probably thinking, man, what kind of vegetable is that? So at the beginning of the year, about May, I got this bed ready for some flowers. We have put different things in this bed, but this year we wanted to do some wildflowers. So we got a couple packets of wildflower seeds and just I got the soil ready. I got all the weeds out, and I put fertilizer in. I tilled it up a little bit, and I got it ready for the seeds. So I threw them in, and because I don't know what wildflower plants look like as they grow, I have to let the weeds grow in. Because if it's a tomato plant or something that you know what it looks like, you can pull out the weeds next to it. So I had to let the weeds grow in, and as you can tell, the flowers didn't do so well. There's a small blue flower, I think, somewhere towards the front there, and some have come in since, but that is an analogy that the sower is trying to the parable of the sower that Jesus is trying to portray here, is that just like those flowers, we can be choked out and not mature in the faith if we allow the weeds, the cares, the riches, the pleasures of life to come in and choke those things out. So we have to be very careful. So the parable of the rich fool, thank you, Kevin, for reading that for us. So we have this man who asked Jesus to divide the inheritance with him from his brother. So in the Jewish culture, they would have the brother, or the firstborn, would have double portion. So it's most likely that he wanted some more portion, and he was the younger brother. But he asks Jesus to tell his brother to divide it with him. He says, man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you? And he says, take care and be on guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. And he told them a parable, saying, the land of the rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and all my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. So you get a picture. I've always pictured this guy he's got his arms behind his back, maybe laying down on his porch or something. He's like, man, I had a great crop this year. I'm going to build these big barns, and look how good I have it. I have everything for several years. I'm just going to eat, drink, be merry, relax, take it easy. But then God says to him, you fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things that you have prepared, whose will they be? He spent all this time focused on the physical, focused on creating wealth. And God says, you're foolish, because once you die, those things are gone. We can't take it with us. Whether you are the richest man on earth, Elon Musk, or you are a beggar on the corner, you are going to end up in a 6-foot grave in a box, regardless. And we can't take anything with us except the things that we treasure towards God, right? So that's the point Jesus is making. He says, so is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God. Everything in this earth is going to pass away, eternal versus physical. Are we rich towards God? The greatest commandment that is brought to, somebody asked Jesus what the greatest commandment is. He says, you shall love the Lord your God with your heart? No, with all of your heart. With all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind. We can't love some of God and some of the things of the world. God is asking for our all. He says this is the great and first commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And I think this is what being rich towards God is loving God, loving his commandments, doing his will, and also loving our neighbor. And when we look at loving our neighbor, I think we sometimes say, love God, love your neighbor, but we forget, I think, the part right after love your neighbor is as yourself. How do I love myself? When I think about that question, we have an element of self-preservation, right? We want what's best for ourselves. We want to do well in life. We want good things to happen to us. We want people to listen to us. If something happens to us, we want somebody to help us, right? So we have to put ourselves above our neighbor. And, we need to look at saving our neighbor and not ourselves, but putting them first. And we need to love our neighbor by doing that. And we're going to look a bit at that and see what God has to say about that in 1 John. I think it ties up why be rich towards God. So he gives us the why here. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. In this, the love of God was made manifest among us. What is this? It is that God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. We love God because he sent his Son to die for us that we might live. That is why we are rich towards God, because that's eternal. We get to go to be with the Father in heaven and see him face to face, and our relationship with him be made full. In this is love, not that we have loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God abides in us, and his love is perfected in us. So that word perfected means brought to its goal or fulfilled. So if we are to love God, to seek him, to seek his will, if we are to imitate his love, it says God continues in us or abides in us, and his love is perfected in us when we love one another. So when we're loving others, when we're putting others above ourselves and serving them and prioritizing them, it says we are being perfected. God's love is being perfected in us. It's being brought to its goal. That is God's goal in our love, is that we love one another. And I want to look finally here at the parable of the Good Samaritan. So what does that look like? What does loving our neighbor look like? And behold, a lawyer stood up to put him to the test, that is Jesus, saying, "Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" And he said to him, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" And he answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And he said to him, "You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live." But he, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" So the Jews, in the Hebrew, that word neighbor just means somebody that you associate with. They didn't associate with Samaritans. They didn't associate with foreigners. They just wanted to associate with Jews. So they saw their neighbor as just other Jewish people. And that's why he asked Jesus that question. But Jesus is going to show him who his neighbor really is. Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers, who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion." So the priest came by first, got on the other side of the road, and Jesus here is purposely calling out the religious leaders, as he usually does, because they are the ones that are supposed to be the examples to the rest of the people. So when he says a priest, they should know that loving God is important, and loving their neighbor is important to God, and that they need to help this person. But instead, they go the other side of the road, and likewise the Levite, the other side of the road, rather than helping this man. But a Samaritan to the Jews was an outcast. Excuse me. Hands are too slippery, I guess. So a Samaritan to the Jews was considered an outcast. They were considered heretics because they believed a little differently in their Jewish ways. So for him to say a Samaritan is the one that helps, it'd be like saying a tax collector or something to the Jews would have caught their attention. But the Samaritan had compassion. The others went to the other side of the road. They didn't care that this man was half dead, but the Samaritan had compassion. So what does he do to prove that he is his neighbor? The Samaritan, he went to him and bound his wounds, in verse 34, pouring on oil and wine to help heal. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take care of him, and whatever you spend, I will repay you when I come back." Which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? And he said, "The one who showed mercy." And Jesus said to him, "You go and do likewise." So the Samaritan didn't just, "Hey buddy, are you all right?" He took care of him. He took him in. He put him on his own animal. He went above and beyond to help this man. And I know for me, there's times where maybe you're driving around town, right? And you see somebody that needs help, but you're busy, right? You got things to do. You got places to be. You got things on your schedule that are filled up. So it's like, I don't have time for that guy. Or maybe it's even somebody in the church. Maybe we're too busy to help others because we've busied up our schedule, so we can't be rich towards God in that moment. So I think that's what Jesus is showing here, is he went beyond and went the extra mile to help this individual. And 2 denarii, so a denarii was about a day's worth of wages. So two denarii, whatever 2 days' wage might be different for some of us, right? But he spent 2 days' worth of wages to help this man. And he told the innkeeper, "Take care of him. Whatever you spend, I will repay when you come back." And Jesus says that this man proved to be a neighbor. It's not just, "Hey man, I hope you do well. I hope you do all right." we prove it through action. We prove love through action. Love is not just some feeling that we get, right? It is action put forth. And that's what exactly this Samaritan did. So Jesus says, go and do likewise. So that's his message to us as well, is we need to go above and beyond to love our neighbor. So in conclusion, what do we treasure most? Again, there's things all over the place, pulling our attention, grabbing us, trying to get us distracted, right? And there's so many things. I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like we're busier than maybe people 100 years ago were. We have things so good now. I say that if I had to guess, I would say that we probably live better now with the luxury comforts than probably any person that's ever walked the earth. So we have to be mindful of that, and that these things can come in and choke us out. Enjoy what God blesses us with, but remember that everything he gives us is temporary, and that God and his kingdom is eternal. We have to have things in their proper place, in priorities. We love and treasure God because he loved us first. He sent his son to die for us, to be the propitiation for our sins, so that we might have life in him and be with God for eternity. God's love is perfected in us and fulfilled when we love our neighbor, when we go above and beyond to love our neighbor. The goal that God's love has in us is for us to love our neighbor, and it's fulfilled when we do so. Watch out for the thorns and the weeds. When those thorns grow in and those weeds grow in, we have to go in and pluck them out. I'm probably going to do that soon to my little bed back there. I need to try to see if I can find some of those weeds and pull them out. But when we start pulling those things out, the plants that we want to stay in, the things that we want to stay in, being rich towards God, those things are going to thrive, and then we're going to start producing fruit for God and his kingdom. And then, lastly, this passage from 2 Corinthians 13 says, examine yourselves to see whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. Or do you not realize this about yourselves, that Christ Jesus is in you, unless you indeed fail to meet the test? We have to look in the mirror constantly and evaluate our hearts constantly to test, where is my heart in my devotion to God? Where is my heart in my devotion to the world? We have to be very careful. This morning, we have an opportunity to put Christ on in baptism. There's water that can be prepared behind us if that is your desire. But if you're struggling with the things of the world, materialism, distractions, and you want to ask for prayers from the congregation, you can do so as we stand to sing.